Мир вам, братья и сестры. Сегодня я бы хотел рассуждать по чуть-чуть первые и вторые заповеди, которые дал нам Бог. И я бы хотел прочитать книгу Philippians, глава 3, стих 17 до 19. Это, по-моему, книга Филиппиянам, глава 3, глава 3, стих 17 до 19. И сегодня я бы хотел поговорить о вот этой церкви. Эта церковь, как и все церкви, они имеют некоторые проблемы. И сегодня я бы хотел рассуждать ответ Павла на вот эти проблемы. Вот люди в этой церкви, они имели проблемы с людьми, которые не были в церкви, и с людьми, которые и были в церкви. Там они учили, что ты можешь делать все, что хочешь своим телом, потому что твое тело, оно physical, оно здесь. И если оно не духовное, тогда это грешное. Если твоя душа уже спасена, ты можешь делать, что хочешь своим телом. И вот эти люди, они шли в церковь, они называли сами себя христианами, но в самом деле они жили очень мирскую жизнь. И, к сожалению, это еще проблема в церквях и наших, и в других. Так что я бы хотел поговорить на вот эту тему. Peace be with you, brothers and sisters. I'm glad to be with you all today, and I would like to speak of God's commandments. The very first one, in fact, you shall have no other gods before me. It is followed quickly by, you shall not make an idol, which will be relevant in my message today as well. There's a reason these two commandments are right at the beginning. When Jesus summarized the commandments, when he was being taunted and tested, he said, love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Notice that to your God, you are to give every ounce of your being, your heart, your soul, and even your mind. Good thing we're not called to love our neighbors to that extent. In this summary, he outlined how important these first two commandments are. They flow right into our love for God. We cannot claim to love God with all our hearts, with all our souls, with all our minds, if we are worshiping or giving glory to something or to someone else. It may seem maybe like an easy question. Do you give glory to something or someone else? Do you spend time worshiping someone or something else? You might say, of course not. I only worship the God of the Bible. I've only stepped foot into a church. I've never been to a mosque. You'll never find me in a different kind of temple. I only come here. I only worship the God of the Bible. But if someone knocked on your door and they asked you, well, hello, are you a believer in the one and only God of the Bible? And of course you'll say, yes, of course. I go to church. I don't attend any other kind of services. I worship the God of the Bible, the one and only. And they'll say, are you sure you don't have any other gods before him? And of course you'll say, yes, of course. Like I said before, I only go to church. I don't worship any other gods. They're going to ask, you don't have any little idols hidden in cupboards or maybe a shrine set up somewhere in your house? And you're going to say, of course not. I only worship the God of the Bible. And that certainly will be the case for every person here. I hope that there is no outright worship of another supposed deity, or that someone were to create an idol out of stone or wood or gold for us to worship or for you to worship. But these kind of things can sometimes be so easy to miss in our lives. I'm not saying that we have idols hidden in drawers that we've created, but for example, every person here has at some point put something else before God or someone else. And if truly you believe that you have not, I would love to meet you. The truth is, we've all done it. And maybe that idol isn't a golden calf set up in your living room meant to worship, but maybe that idol is in your garage, or it's floating out on the lake, or maybe that idol is in your kitchen. Maybe that idol is your work. This has been the case since the very beginning. Today I want to read from the book of Philippians, chapter 3, verse 17 through 19. And before, I want to give some context. This was written by Paul while under house arrest in Rome. And of course, the audience that is being written to is the church in Philippi. A church that Paul founded himself a little over a decade ago. Now, this church, just like any other, is facing some problems. They're facing opposition from outside of the church by the Jews that are oppressing them, that are calling them a sect. They're facing opposition from the people within the church with the false teachings. And they are not getting along with each other. Of course, that's not for everybody, but those are the problems facing the church. And unfortunately, it looks like not much has changed. These are the same things that churches deal with every single day today. And that's why I particularly enjoy reading the epistles, because it's a message to the church. It's not a message to the people out there. This is a message directly to us, and so many of the times we can relate. So we're going to be looking over Paul's response to the false teaching. He says, "Brothers and sisters, join in my example and observe those who walk according to the pattern you have in us. For many walk, of whom I often told you, and now tell you, even as I weep, they are the enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their appetite, and whose glory is in their shame, who have their minds on earthly things." Now, a few things about this text. He was telling the church, look, do as I do. I'm sure he knew that he was not the perfect example, right? We already had a perfect example, but he knew enough that he was a pretty good one. So he urged the church to follow as he does, and other examples like his, and to not be led astray. But with great sadness, he later says, he realized that there are people in the church that only claim to be part of the church. They claim to be believers, but they are in fact enemies of the cross of Christ. Such harsh words. They're not misguided, they're not led astray, they're not paused or temporarily lost. They are enemies of the cross of Christ. And this is what he says about them. Whose end is destruction. The word translated here, most likely, it can refer to either their ultimate damnation or to the present destruction that they are causing in their lives. But I would assume it's their eternal damnation. Whose God is their belly. Now, this term doesn't just mean that they eat a lot. It's referred to their appetite. It's a broader reference to the sensual indulgence in general. They live for the pleasures of their body, their mind, and their soul, not for the love of God. They live for themselves. Their glory is their shame. This shows the misplaced priorities of these enemies. They gloried about the things that they should have been ashamed about. They gloried about their sin. They set their minds on earthly things. This describes the focus of their life. It was not to please and to worship God, but to get along with this world, to succeed, to get further ahead. Just like some of the other churches of their time, they're facing what's known as Gnosticism. There are people trying to separate the spiritual and the physical, the opposite of legalism, which is rules, rules, rules. They're claiming that, well, there are no rules. You can do whatever you want with your physical body because your body is physical, so it is sinful. Anything spiritual is holy. So if your soul is saved, that is spiritual, it is holy, you can do whatever you want with your body. There is complete freedom. They were justifying their actions, doing whatever they wanted, and claiming to be part of the church while living a life of complete indulgence in their sin. Our view may not be the same today. I don't think Gnosticism survived this far, but the result, unfortunately, looks very similar. We face much of the same problems that the church in Philippi faced. Because of where we are and the opportunities that we have here in America, well, chasing opportunities and success is often seen as a virtue. It's a great thing. The pursuit of happiness, the American dream, it's something you must do, in fact, because it's something that we did not have in the countries that we fled from. Two of the attributes that are born out of this type of behavior are laziness and gluttony. Now, I know these don't get mentioned very much from up here, but you might even be thinking, well, I definitely don't deal with those. I'm a very hard worker. I've never had to face those. They're also not easy to identify in our lives, just like what we mentioned in the beginning, but I think you'd be surprised. We often simplify laziness to mean sitting on the couch all day and to put away Pringles. And we simplify gluttony to mean putting the local buffet out of business. But at their core, they are self-indulgence, unlimited, doing what you desire without limits. To please your own desires, to worship not God, but to worship yourself, to do whatever you please. As the text said, their God is their appetites, and they have set their minds on their earthly things. Maybe gluttony doesn't show itself as obvious to you. Maybe it's spending an obscene amount of time at the gym, working out and pushing yourself so that you can eat whatever you want when the time comes and not gain any weight. Or maybe laziness looks like this. Those of you that maybe have a truck or a trailer might understand. Knowing that someone is moving and needs your help, and all of a sudden you see a phone call from them, and well, you let it go to voicemail because you know what they're calling you about. You think maybe it's not so bad to miss that phone call for a couple hours, and then the time comes and you call them back and, oh, hey brother, I just got to my phone. Sorry, I didn't see. Oh, you needed help. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't get it. There are many examples that I can bring up right now, but the truth is, if you're paying attention, you've probably come up with an example of your own. Why is it so easy to fall into this trap of self-indulgence, to pursue our own desires, to do what we want without control? And I think the answer is simple. Because God made us want more. He made us to desire to be fulfilled. Unfortunately, that's what self-indulgence promises us. It promises us that if you do this, then you will be fulfilled. You will finally be made whole. That desire that you have, if you keep working hard enough, you're going to be made whole. We try to be fulfilled by the things in this world, by the things that we can control, maybe the things that we can earn, or maybe the things that we receive as gifts. But the truth is, nothing here can fill our appetite, right? Because as soon as you start to eat, that appetite never diminishes. It only grows bigger and bigger. You only end up wanting more and more. And the things of this world that made you this promise, that as long as you get to this point, as long as you push yourself hard enough, as long as you work hard enough, you're gonna make it. Well, that's a promise they can't keep. If you work a 9-to-5, making $130,000 a year, maybe more with benefits, then you'll finally be fulfilled. Your family won't need anything. Well, you'll get to that point and you realize, well, that's not enough. If you work hard enough to get that promotion and you get to the next level and you get the new title and maybe the new office, you'll finally be fulfilled. And then once you get there, well, there's another promotion that you can work for. It's never enough. And the more we give into those desires, the more we stray from obeying God's first commandment, the more we make our appetite the object of our worship. Now that we know what not to do, I think it's important to mention what to do as well. If God gave us this desire to be fulfilled, well, what are we to do with it? Did he give us this desire as some sort of sick joke to just give it to us and say, okay, now you deal with it? He didn't say, oh, you need to push this desire down. You're not meant for greatness. You're not meant to be fulfilled. Or did he just say, you have to deal with it. I'm going to leave you in charge of this desire. Just don't sin. No, of course not. He gave us instructions on what to do with this built-in desire to be fulfilled. He gave it to us so that we can seek it out. Not the little crumbs that we have here on earth, but to be fulfilled the way that he wanted us to be fulfilled. C.S. Lewis once said, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling around with drink and sex and ambition, while infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum, because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. We try to find joy in the things here as if they could even measure up to the things that God has to offer us, or the things that are waiting for us. So what are these instructions? They can be found in the greatest sermon preached by the greatest preacher there ever was, the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Here is the command. We are fulfilled in our obedience to the Lord. In here we read of a promise of fulfillment. And unlike the worldly promises we hear so often, or that we are led to believe, this one was made by Jesus Christ himself. It's good to remember that Jesus said in this day to a culture that very much understood what it meant to be hungry and what it meant to thirst. I think that's lost in translation a little bit for us because I can't remember the last time I was actually hungry. How does this hunger and thirst for righteousness express itself? A man longs to have a righteous nature. A man longs to be sanctified, to be made more holy. A man longs to continue in God's righteousness, and a man longs to see righteousness promoted in the world. Now, brothers and sisters, Christ came to this earth, he wrapped himself in flesh, and he lived that perfect life. He lived a sinless life, and he died a traitor's death, so that we may be reconciled with the Father and live a life worthy of our calling. Now let that be true among us today, so that we run from the lie of self-indulgence and placing our desires first, making ourselves gods over our life, and hunger and thirst for righteousness, so that we may have no other God before him. Братья и сестры, как я сказал в начале, вот эта церковь, там были люди, которые говорили, что если ты спасен, твоя душа спасена, ты можешь делать, что хочешь своим телом, потому что твоя душа уже спасена. Они просто хотели жить в мире и идти в церковь. Но это, конечно, неправда. Они вот эту самую первую заповедь, они нарушили, потому что они как прославляли сами себя. И вот это был ответ Павла на вот такие поступки. Он не говорил, что они, может, не поняли, или они, может... это не был маленький такой поступок. Он сказал, что это враги Иисуса Христа. Это враги чего Христос сделал на Христе. И вот это my message for today. Спасибо. Let's all stand and pray. Thank you.